Two people I know retired the same year with almost the same amount of money. One of them sleeps fine. The other one is awake at 3 in the morning doing arithmetic he already did yesterday. Same number, two completely different lives inside it. For a long time I assumed the difference was personality. One is a worrier and one is not, and that is that. But the more of these conversations I have, the less that explanation holds up, because the worrying is not spread evenly. It clusters around very specific things, and those things turn out to be measurable. I am Sam, and today I want to hand you the clearest framework I have found for this, because it explains something that the balance in an account never will. Here is where it comes from. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is a federal agency, needed a way to measure something they called financial well-being, not wealth, not income, the experience of being okay about money. They defined it as a state where a person can meet their current and ongoing financial obligations, can feel secure about their financial future, and is able to make choices that let them enjoy life. Read that definition again and notice what is in it. Obligations, security, and choices. Only the first one is really about the size of a number. They built the measurement on 4 elements, and I want to walk through each one, because when I show these to people, almost everybody can point at the one that is wrong for them within about 10 seconds. The first element is having control of your day-to-day and month-to-month finances. Not being rich, having control, knowing what comes in, knowing what goes out, and not being surprised. This is the one that produces the most misery per dollar, and it is completely independent of the size of your account. I have talked to people with a very comfortable retirement who genuinely could not tell you what their monthly outflow is, because it comes from 4 different places, and 2 of them are automatic. They are not in danger. They just do not have control, and the nervous system does not know the difference between danger and not knowing. Meanwhile, somebody living on a much smaller and much simpler income can have complete control. One deposit, a known set of bills, a routine. That person often sleeps better than the wealthier one, and everybody around them finds that confusing. The second element is the capacity to absorb a financial shock. The furnace, the car, the dental work that turns out not to be covered. The moment somebody in the family needs help, and you are the one who can give it. Notice that this is not the same as being wealthy either. It is about whether there is a layer between your normal life and an unexpected bill. A person with a modest amount of money set aside specifically for shocks has capacity. A person with far more money, all of it locked in places that are slow or costly to reach, does not feel that they have capacity, even though on paper they clearly do. That gap between having it and being able to reach it is where an enormous amount of retirement anxiety lives. The third element is being on track to meet your financial goals. And here is the sharp part. You cannot be on track if you never said where you were going. A great many people arrive in retirement having done everything right and never having written down what the money is actually for, so there is no track. There is just an amount, and an amount by itself gives you nothing to be on track with. Any number can feel too small if it is not attached to a purpose. This is the element people skip because it sounds soft. It is not soft. It is the difference between a number that means something and a number that just sits there being judged. The fourth element is having the freedom to make choices that let you enjoy life. Can you say yes to the trip? Can you help the grandchild? Can you eat out with friends on a Tuesday without the evening costing you an hour of second-guessing afterward? This is the one my generation is worst at, and it is the one where being careful for 40 years quietly turns into a habit that outlives its usefulness. So there are the 4. Control, capacity for a shock, being on track, and freedom to choose. Now look at that list and notice something. Only one of the 4 is directly about how much money you have. The other 3 are about structure, about access, about direction, and about permission. Which is exactly why 2 people with the same amount can live in 2 different worlds. And the research backs this up in a careful, unglamorous way. Income and wealth do correlate with how people feel about their finances. Of course they do. But there is variation left over that economic resources do not explain. Knowing what somebody earns does not tell you how they feel about money. I want to be careful here, because this subject attracts nonsense. I am not going to tell you that money does not matter, or that attitude is everything. Real financial hardship is real, and no amount of reframing fixes an income that does not cover the bills. What I am saying is narrower and better supported. Above the point where the bills are covered, the size of the number stops being the main thing that decides how you feel, and those other 3 elements take over. Let me tell you about the other person from the opening, because she is the more interesting case. She retired with less. Meaningfully less, not a rounding difference. One pension deposit, one Social Security deposit, a small amount set aside, and a paid-off house that needs work she keeps postponing. By every measure that gets discussed at a family dinner, she is the one who should be worried. She is not. And when I finally asked her why, she gave me an answer that had nothing to do with money at all. She said she knows what comes in on the 3rd and what goes out by the 10th, and after that, the month is hers. She has a set amount for the things that break. She has a list of what she wants the next 10 years to contain, which is mostly 2 grandchildren and a coastline. And she has decided, in advance, that lunch out on Fridays is not a thing she is going to reconsider every Friday. Control, a buffer, a direction, a standing permission. All 4, built by a person who would never use any of those words, and who has less money than the man lying awake at 3 in the morning. That is not a nice story about attitude. It is what the framework predicts. She scores high on all 4 elements. He scores high on 1. Now, why does this happen so much at retirement specifically? Because the 4 elements shift underneath you the day the paycheck stops, and nobody tells you they are shifting. For 40 years, control was handled by an employer. The money arrived on a schedule you did not have to think about. The moment you retire, that regularity has to be rebuilt by you out of several different sources that arrive on different days. Most people do not rebuild it. They just watch the balance and hope. For 40 years, your capacity to absorb a shock was partly your job. If something went badly wrong, there was overtime, or a raise, or another job. That option quietly disappears, and almost nobody consciously replaces it with something else. It is the single most under-discussed change in the whole transition. And for 40 years, being on track had a built-in definition. Retire at some age with some amount. Then you arrive, the goal is met, and there is no new one. The track ends, and a lot of people mistake the absence of a track for a problem with the amount. Which brings me back to the practical part. So let me get practical, because a framework you cannot act on is just vocabulary. Take the 4 elements and ask yourself which one is actually broken for you. Not all 4. The 1. If it is control, the fix is boring, and it works. Write down every deposit that arrives in a month, and every payment that leaves, on one page, by hand. Most people who do this find 1 or 2 things that surprise them, and more importantly, they find that the fog lifts. The number did not change, the visibility did. If it is the shock, the fix is separation. Take a defined amount, whatever is realistic for you, and put it somewhere boring, liquid, and mentally labeled for exactly this. Its job is not to grow. Its job is to be reachable on a Tuesday when something breaks. Many people already have this money. They just have it mixed in with everything else, which means it does no psychological work at all. If it is being on track, the fix is a sentence. Write down what the money is for, in plain words. To stay in this house for as long as we can. To help 2 grandchildren with school. To not be a burden. To see the coast every spring. Once there is a sentence, there is a direction, and a number can finally be measured against something other than fear. And if it is freedom, the fix is a rehearsal. Pick one small thing, decide in advance that it is allowed, and do it without recalculating afterward. The dinner. The trip to see the friend. The thing you have been treating as an extravagance that is genuinely inside your means. You are not learning to be reckless. You are practicing the skill of enjoying money on purpose, which is a skill, and which atrophies exactly like any other. Now let me deal with the objection I hear at this point, because it always comes. Somebody says, that is fine, but I do not have enough, so all of this is beside the point. Sometimes that is true, and I never want to be the guy who tells a person with a real shortfall that the problem is in their head. But often, when we sit down and go through the 4, the person discovers that what is broken is not the amount. It is that they have no visibility, or no reachable buffer, or no stated purpose. Those are fixable in weeks, and the amount does not have to change at all. There is one more trap worth naming before I finish, because it undoes all 4 elements at once. Comparison. If your measure of whether you are okay comes from what the neighbors appear to have, then none of the 4 dials will ever help you, because you have handed the entire scale to somebody else, and what you are comparing against is not even real. You are seeing the car and not the loan on it, the trip and not what it cost them to take it. The 4 elements are private on purpose. Every one of them is measured against your own life. Control of your month, not somebody else's month. A buffer big enough for your furnace. A direction that came out of your own head. Permission that you gave yourself. The day somebody stops asking whether they have enough compared to other people, and starts asking whether those 4 things are in place in their own house, is usually the day the 3 in the morning arithmetic stops. There is one more thing, and I want to end on it because it might be the most useful idea in this whole episode. You can move your own score. That is what these 4 elements actually give you. Not a verdict on your finances, but 4 dials, 3 of which you can turn without earning another dollar. Most people spend their entire retirement trying to turn the one dial that is hardest to move and never touch the other 3. The man I mentioned at the start, the one awake at 3 in the morning, has plenty of money. What he does not have is the second element. Everything he owns is invested, and reaching any of it requires phone calls and decisions and a sense that he is breaking something. So a broken water heater feels like a crisis to a man who could buy 50 of them, and he has been living that way for 6 years. He does not need more money. He needs one boring account with a specific job. So here is the assignment for this week, and it is one question, not a project. Sit down and read the 4 back to yourself. Control of the month, capacity for a shock, on track towards something, freedom to choose. Then name the one that is weakest for you out loud and write down the single smallest thing that would move it, not all 4. 1. The smallest version of it. Because in my experience, the people who never feel broke are not the people with the most. They are the people who have quietly built all 4 of those things, usually without knowing they had a name. Tell me in the comments which of the 4 is the weak one for you. I read them, and there is a real pattern in the answers that I want to talk about in a future episode. I am Sam. Thanks for spending this time with me, and I will see you in the next one.